How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Factorio. Hope you guys have been enjoying the series so far. If you guys have, you guys know to do smash the like button if you haven't done so already. And with that, let's get to the episode. So, in the last couple of episodes of sorts, we've been working very, very painstakingly to try to get Aquilo pretty much fully automated so we don't have to really touch it ever again. However, that has been proving to be a bit of a headache. Getting some of those stuff set up just because you have to manage heat and other things, so it's just kind of a nightmare. And so right now I'm setting up the fuel train so we can test our proof of concept here on the oil, which I went ahead and set it up so that we have two loading bays for oil and then the heat pump to generate the heat that we need for the island. It's already connected to power, so it has power. And then once we can get the fuel going, we do have to manually start it, but it should be fine as long as we're able to produce enough. But that's going to be the next part of it, is we need to scale this up. But this, actually, funny enough, just needs more oil. And then if it has more oil, it should be able to produce more fuel, right? So that's kind of one of those things. And then we'll have to probably stamp it 2 or 3 times to make sure that we have enough of that. So one of those things that I'm looking at right now is just making sure that this guy is all set for what it needs to do. But in order to do that, we just need to make sure we have something like a so. I don't mind that. Okay, so we'll try something like that. And that's not correct. That is correct. If I can put these things where they need to go. Nope, nope. That, there we go. Okay. Something like this. Right? And then how do we heat the splitters? So then we can do something like that. Almost. Because then we put it into here. Yeah. So really it's got to do... Well, actually that's fine. I can do that. Okay. Heat can come down like a so. Actually, let's just do an underground so the heat can pass through. Like that. Okay, but then how do we... I can see a path like that. Because that gets everything there, and then we just back this one up one, like that. Still goes forward, goes down. This looks awful. Like, that just looks awful. I'm sure there's a better way to do that. I will redo that at some point. And some point's never actually going to happen. We can just take from this line, I think. Because we're already passing it up here. So I think that's fine. Actually. Okay. Something like that. Looks fine. Okay. And then... we need heat there, heat there. I'll connect that up. Perfect. Okay. So now that goes there. One thing I'm thinking of is, well, that does its thing. On these islands, the only problem is if for some reason heat runs out. It goes below freezing and the pipes freeze. Well, if that happens, then the inserters can't insert, or rather, they can't unload from the cargo wagon into the heat exchanger, or the heating tower, rather, to then be able to heat the heat pipes to unthaw everything, right? So it's kind of that little bit of a problem that we can have. So what I'm thinking potentially, dang, that thing filled up fast, is we need the ability to have some sort of warning, which I think we may actually employ the programmable speakers so that if it detects, I don't know if we can do it, but let me see if we can. No, I can't connect a wire to this, but maybe there's a way we can detect if it's frozen or not. I guess actually what we could do is, hold up, I can connect it to that. So let's just arbitrarily say we could read temperature. And then, yeah, okay. So what we could do is we could just read the heating tower's temperature. And if the heating tower's temperature falls below 200, start giving us a warning. Because things will still be working, but it's very clearly progressing to not a sustainable, like, temp level. So then if it's falling below 200, start giving that warning, hey, low heat or low fuel or whatever. And then we can maybe have another one at like 100 is an actual warning. I'll take a look at doing that. But in theory, it should be good. So now that we have that set up, we need to get more of these set up. So this we determined we just need more crude oil. So it's a bit of a conundrum. So it needs to go to fuel, and then it also needs to go to heat. So fuel, it needs to wait until fuel in all locomotives, full fuel, and then it needs to wait until it has, ironically, full inventory. Where is that? Has cargo? No, full cargo. So both of these need to be true, and then at heat, it just needs to go until empty cargo, or it's always going to be burning, so inactivity doesn't make sense. But do I want excess trains? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say or 30 seconds. So empty cargo or 30 seconds. And we'll adjust that accordingly. Because what I'm thinking is I don't want it to... And we're going to get on this just so that it doesn't immediately take off. But it shouldn't, because I don't think that last car's full. That was almost. Because what I don't want to happen is... Inactivity isn't necessarily always going to happen because these guys are constantly draining fuel. So they're going to constantly be causing this to have inactivity. Which, sure, having these parked there so that there's 4,000 fuel just sitting there, but the problem then is each island will have a train essentially sitting there, potentially more if we have 2 or however many set to wait there. Because we'll probably have 2, in theory, because there's 4 slots in the stacker, 2 are for the oil, so then we could have 3 for heat. Kind of seems a little bit superfluous to me, so maybe 3 for oil, 2 for heat, 1 in the bay and one in the stacker, but... We'll see. And then this guy should take off shortly. Oh, he needs a lot more fuel than I thought. Just go to heat. So we'll go there, and then we'll start getting that all set up. So interesting that it pathed that way and it didn't go the other way. And then I was going to use my roundabouts, but I realized that the roundabouts are not designed for this spacing. I apparently designed a different spacing on this planet. Go figure. But the train, at least, can get here pretty quickly. And then... yeah, we need... to do that. And I'm just curious how quickly... I mean, thankfully the empty fuel condition will... make it so that they need to do what they need. Okay. So then assuming we have another fuel train, right, they'll keep topping it up. So I'm just curious to see how much... I know our production isn't enough to sustain this right now, so it's unlikely that we would see this be able to do what it needs to. But in the meantime, we can at least start getting all the oil actually hooked up, because that's one thing we did not do yet. So we need... because it's going to go there. Okay. So we need to go all the way there. And then from here, we are going to tap in. And then that's going to need heat. That's going to need heat. I can go over. Something like that. And then because there's so many dense spots right here, we're gonna do something like that. Make sure heat's all connected. We can actually just run heat kind of all throughout this. So that should get power, or well, heat, not power. Okay. So that should be these guys. And then any that are like this, we can just go ahead and grab some pipe. And that's all connected up. Okay, so then let's make sure that these guys are also all connected up. Oh, too far. And then like that. Okay. And then heat's gonna slowly propagate through this whole thing as it goes about its system. And the reason I started with the oil first over the lithium brine is because we need this for more fuel to be able to expand our islands of influence. Okay, something like that. So that should all have heat. That should have heat. Both of those have heat. And then that's unneeded. That's fine. And I'm just going to connect that so that there's another path for the heat to flow. Actually, I don't know. We can connect it this way. So we can connect all of these right here, like that. Okay. Everything there is heated. Those are all connected. And this guy we can connect. Like that. And then just make sure they have heat. Okay, everything should be connected now on this island. Heat's gonna slowly propagate through the whole system to the oil wells and such. And then that should give us what we need here to be able to start acquiring oil correctly. So let me see what we can do about getting more solid fuel production, because we are going to need, most certainly we're going to need more. So up here we currently have this guy, which is doing a lot of heavy lifting. How wide is this? Let's see, so we can fit 1, 2. We can fit 2 more in here, basically. We may be able to fit 4, or actually, if we shift it over all the way. I'm actually probably gonna have one just running just to these trains, or at the very least running to make sure that that has the power it needs. So let me see if we can do that. Alright, so let's make sure everything's hooked up. That looks correct. Mostly. That should be fine. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be. Okay. And then we are actually going to reverse this center column, I think. Yeah, let's do that. So then we should just be able to take this whole bit, rotate it 180 degrees, and connect it like that. And we get ourselves a reverse flow, which lets us feed, and we'll feed the trains exclusively with this, because then that way they have a dedicated fuel line. We'll probably do, instead of branching here like we are, we'll leave this one over here on the left to do the outer ring of heat, and then we'll have this column here feed this train, and then we'll have this column here feed the rockets, so that everything kind of has a dedicated heating or fuel source for the heat. And then we'll see about getting that hooked up once we start actually getting oil trains properly set up. So then this guy is oil, right? Yep. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a new group, and let's call it oil. And then in the oil group, we want oil. We're gonna wait until full cargo, and then oil drop. We're gonna wait until why do I never find it? Empty cargo. And then also at oil drop, we want to make sure it has full fuel, and go ahead and go automatic. So we're gonna start with 1 just to make sure that it does its job. And then we know heat has propagated far enough once the radar here turns on, because it does have power. We should be able to see that soon. And then this guy is still getting fuel, although it's very, very slow. So we'll have to kind of just scale that accordingly. But while we're doing that, I believe everything there should be set up. So we should be able to start testing that soon. I think the next phase should be setting up this other crude oil island as well as this lithium brine island, just so that way we can start getting more stuff set up. Because they're both right here on this junction, so it shouldn't be too hard for us to actually just take this mostly, mirror it over, and be able to get a whole nother setup here on that oil island. So I think let's do that. Let's grab more concrete, because I know we're already going to need more. And go from there. But yeah, so I'm hoping that this will work with the trains here on Aquilo. The problem that I do see potentially having is if fuel doesn't get to where it needs to go, we can essentially run out of fuel very, very easy. Because, well, not fuel necessarily, but the heat can become a problem very, very quickly on the islands. Which is the only thing I can conceivably think of that could be, again, could be a problem. That could be an interesting point that a mod could do, is add a way to transport energy. Or I guess not energy, but transport heat. Although transporting energy would be interesting too. Like the rail cars, because right now you can transport solid objects, you can transport fluids. So now the next two things that I would be curious about seeing somebody make for like additional cargo wagons would be transporting energy, and there may already be a mod, I just haven't looked at any mods recently. So correct me if I'm wrong, or if you know of a mod that adds what I'm thinking. Being able to have that option where you can transport energy, so like an accumulator wagon, which not 100% sure the usage for that, but actually, no, I do think of a usage for it. Like somewhere like here on Flagora or even Aquilo, where if you don't have the ability to cross these great distances, like the deep oil for whatever reason, to transport power between the islands, because especially if you're on a really, really small island, for instance, and I don't know, maybe you can't use lightning collectors, or the lightning collectors say aren't enough or something. I could see a usage for it, I suppose, where you bring in the train and then it's set to discharge mode. Could be interesting. Could be a very interesting concept. Because perhaps you add it to a train like this, like a 1x2. So instead of having lightning collectors or whatever, it comes in, it plugs in, it charges up the facility, or powers the facility while it's here, and then it disappears. Also, electric trains would be interesting as a concept. So they actually have to charge, but you don't have to ever fuel them, so you don't have to worry about the fuel loop for them. Could also be something that could be interesting. Look, I'm just saying. These are, you know, harebrained ideas, but I think they're definitely something maybe to consider. Oh yeah, I think we could probably do something like that, although That might be too close, so we might have to put it up here, then propagate down, or because we can't flip this. Yeah, because they have rail signals. I mean, ideally something like that would be really good, because then it just loops back around. It's kind of that could work, actually, putting it on the top. Yeah, and then we'll put the connection for it here, and we'll put this guy's connection probably somewhere down here. That I think we'll do. Okay, so let's go ahead and plot that all out. So something like a so, although let's do that just so it gives us some leeway. Definitely having the better power generation has been really good for working with the robots. Okay. Although I don't like how it does these. Like, it shouldn't delete them if it can just work. You know? Like, I don't understand it, but probably 'cause the way the game's trying to figure out. Oh yeah. Do something like that, and then make sure all the tracks are connected, because apparently all the tracks were not connected for a moment. That looks to be fine. It looks like a bit of a freaking mess. But there's not. Is the T-junction up here? Oh, well, there's no radar. Crud. Does that fix it? No. Why is... Because there's not one here? Yeah, okay, so that looks fine. Alright, so that connection's made. We'll go ahead and I'll start getting this other oil island set up going, and then let me just take a look. Okay, so it does look like we are starting to get fluid. I also forgot that these things have 50,000 internal storage. That is crazy. Okay. Yeah, so we'll have to go ahead and definitely add some heat pipe. Add heat pipe. And that guy hasn't propagated to yet. Okay, perfect. But radar is here now, so that is awesome. And then how is the heat going? Okay, so we've run out of fuel. So now the question becomes, can we get a fuel delivery before then? Probably not, so let's go ahead and send it over here. And at least until we can get that first bit of oil, which I'm actually going to hop on this train and have it go to the oil drop, just so that we can get the oil into the system, so we can try to get a positive feedback loop of more fuel means more oil means more fuel, and until it becomes that critical point where, okay, now we have excess that we're actually stockpiling and sitting on, which will be nice. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Hope you guys learned something. This, I feel like, is... I don't know if anybody else has done this, although I haven't really looked into other playthroughs currently, because I am still trying to just play through it as blindly as I can, really. Or as much as I can. I mean, I've since completed our single-player world. We have beaten the Shattered Planet, so I do know what that all entails, so... I guess now I can kind of start looking around and seeing, okay, what are people doing on the different planets and stuff, but is anybody else using trains on Aquilo, or is everybody just pumping it through vast distances, so to speak, and using belts for everything? I don't know, let me know down below what you guys are using, or are you madmen using robots on a planet who they drain the power, like, in almost instantly, it feels like. Definitely let me know that down below. And as always, hope you guys learned something. Hope you guys enjoyed. And I'll see you guys all in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one. And peace out.